Here I'm going to talk about a rhetorical figure called climax or gradatio, and I will also mention anadiplosis, antistrophe, and antithesis. Here's an example from the novel Milkman by Anna Burns. I knew it had happened this time because of the milkman and his involvement. And by involvement, I mean connected. And by connected, I mean active rebellion. And by active rebellion, I mean state enemy renouncer, owing to the political problems that existed in this place. So now I was to be on file somewhere, in a photograph somewhere, as a once unknown, but now certainly known associate. Here I've broken up the passage, the two sentences, into different lines to highlight the structure and some of the rhetorical figures. So here's the gradatio, here's the antistrophe, and here is the antithesis. And now I'll talk about each of them in turn. First, I'll talk about the climax or gradatio, which Richard Lanham defines as mounting by degrees through linked words or phrases, usually of increasing weight and in parallel construction. Gradatio is an extended anadiplosis, which is using the last element of one phrase as the first element of the next. Now let's look more closely at the examples. The gradatio starts with a milkman's involvement, a word that is repeated to kick off a series that goes, and by A I mean B, and by B I mean C, and by C I mean D. Through this series, this gradation, involvement gradually and in steps becomes state enemy renouncer. And then the whole series, and maybe also the way each element turns into the next, is attributed to the political problems in this place. This time and this place are important and often repeated words in this novel, which could depict Northern Ireland during the Troubles, but does so without using any proper nouns to identify the place or the people in it. There's lots to say, I think, about the effectiveness of this gradatio in conveying the narrator's assessment of and discomfort with the milkman, as well as the particular problems of this place at this time, in which one thing means or entails another in dangerous ways. I'd like to point out, though, an interesting grammatical feature here, that the elements A, B, C, and D are not grammatically parallel, even though they are put into this parallel construction. They are not all nouns, like the first term, involvement, and they cannot all work grammatically with the his that starts off the gradatio. You can say his involvement, but not his connected. You can say his active rebellion, but not his state enemy renouncer, at least not to mean that he is a state enemy renouncer. The fact that the terms in the parallel construction are not grammatically parallel makes for a contrast between what the narrator explicitly says about what she means by the terms and what is implied by the way she says it. The terms alternate between something that belongs to the milkman in the sense that he does it, his involvement, his active rebellion, and something that he is. He is connected. He is a state enemy renouncer. This difference contrasts actions and identities. The narrator starts with the vaguest and safest description of what the milkman does and leads the reader to its dangerous political significance. The steps in between are not necessary to the basic meaning of the sentence. The narrator could have started with the final element and just said, I knew it had happened this time because the milkman was a state enemy renouncer. The gradatio, though, not only conveys this information, but also suggests an ominous inevitability of one thing meaning another or being taken to mean another in this political climate. And the next sentence will reinforce this sense by turning to what the narrator's being seen with the milkman will mean for her. The it that happened in the first sentence is that the narrator's picture was taken by state forces who are surveilling renouncers and their associates. The next sentence describes the consequences for the narrator. The repetition of somewhere is another rhetorical figure called antistrophe, repeating the closing word of successive clauses. This antistrophe emphasizes the contrast between the narrators being captured in a photograph on file with the unknown somewhere this information is kept. The contrast between unknown and known, which is an antithesis, sums up what has happened to the narrator because of the milkman. His unwanted attention has drawn even more unwanted attention and turned her into his known associate, which makes her involved, which starts off its own chain, this time not about what the narrator means by the milkman's involvement, but about what other people will think about her unwanted involvement with him. Here's the whole passage again. I hope that you can see how the gradatio, antistrophe, and antithesis are working here. And as always, I welcome questions, comments, more examples, and suggestions.